Hey, I spilled some ice. I'm so sorry. It was just ice, and it's going to melt and then it's going to evaporate really fast.
I'm going to go get something for you. Do you want to keep using that cup, or do you want to like scoop that?
Oh, just put the ice in the cup.
Oh, well, I didn't know if you wanted to keep using the cup.
No, I'm fine.
Like, if you want to keep using the cup, then
I
get
lubed up for the pod. Welcome to Rewatchers on the pod. What's that face?
I was excited. That was an excited face.
I always feel like I'm
Every
wrong. I'm
fucking
insecure.
time.
I'm very
I was
insecure.
preparing to say my name.
This is we can't have a smooth start. It just wouldn't be our podcast.
Well, it would be when you're not here, but it's no, you're right. When you're here, that's the MO.
Since your return from your break, are you okay?
No, I'm on a lot of drugs. Okay. Hi, welcome to Rewatchers on the pod. We watched Strangers on a Train, and it was great. I hate all of you. Okay. I'm Mitchell Marshall here with
Tyler McKinley.
Gwen Hammer.
Tyler Harris.
Justin Hammer.
and our special guest this week, a long-time listener and not first-time guest, but we're excited to have you here, Casey Callaway. Casey, how are you doing? We're so glad you're here.
I'm doing great, guys. It's a dream come true, for sure.
Oh, this is special. This is special.
I think it's worth noting that that Casey is not in the room with us, but instead is in California.
Long-time listener, first-time caller.
So yeah, this is great, and he did suggest Strangers on a Train for us. Which Mitchell has been diligent enough to take notes on all the happenings in Strangers on a Train, and is now going to regale us with its wonderful contents.
Everyone, shift your imagination to black and white, and I'm going to take you on a journey.
Oh, hold on. I'm tuning in.
Do I need to switch the aspect ratio
tuning
too?
in.
Yes, yep. We're now at 4 by... Yeah.
Yeah, there we go.
Two bros get on a train and play a little footsie. Enter Bruno, who doesn't shut the hell up. He knows a lot about the tennis player's love life. Over lunch, Bruno continues his eccentricities about infidelity, bucket lists, and murdering each other's family members. Guy stops off in Metcalf to see his pregnant wife, Miriam. She's been stepping out, and apparently we do not have DNA tests, so she wants that Wimbledon money. And then Bruno admires his mom's art and expresses his daddy issues right before Guy calls. Bruno goes to Metcalf and follows Miriam's devil's three-way through the fair. Miriam got them thirsty eyes for Bruno, the not-so-subtle stalker. Bruno follows them into the tunnel of love alone, which I have a feeling he has done many times. Miriam frolics away from her admirers right into the strangling hands of Bruno's in the woods, and she is dead. Bruno reports his half of crisscross to Guy, who is shocked and didn't think it was literal. Guy goes to see his alternate boo, the senator's daughter. The family reinforms him of Miriam's murder and discusses his alibi. When meeting with the Popo, the Delaware tech professor who was on the train with Guy does not corroborate his story. Bruno calls, writes letters, and shows up in public, but Guy ignores him. I guess he doesn't want to kill nobody daddy. Anne notices Bruno's name on his tie and begins to suspect something when he shows up at Guy's tennis match, pretending not to know him. Bruno sends Guy a house key, map, and gun. He begins to show up and cause ripples around Guy's acquaintances, bringing up space travel and catching murderers. Anne's sister, a.k.a. Barbara, a.k.a. Babs, a.k.a. the OG Reddit deep diver, a.k.a. she looks like Miriam, gives Bruno a fright as he innocently demonstrates strangling on an old woman and then cannot stop. Anne confronts the guy and he spills the beans about, confronts not the guy, Guy, and he spills the beans about the train and murder. Guy tells Bruno he is ready to snuff out his pops and heads to his casa. First, he makes friends with the family puppy, then he enters to kill, but seemingly actually wants to tell Bruno's father his son's a murderer, but in his room is Bruno. Guy tells him he's a psycho. Anne tells Bruno's mom what's actually going on, and she thinks it's all a prank because she's a sweethearted lady. Guy and Anne powwow before a tennis match to set a plan so one of them can return to Metcalf to try and stop Bruno from planting the lighter. Guy has to win all 3 sets and plays much faster than his normal style. Babs helps the plot by leaving pants in a cab. Guy's FBI tail and cohort are ready to arrest him, but Bruno drops the cigarette box down a sewage grate and struggles to get it back. Guy gives Hennessy the slip and puts the pants pants on. Bruno anxiously awaits Dark at the amusement park. Guy arrives, followed by many police. The Tunnel of Love operators recognizes Bruno. Guy confronts Bruno on the merry-go-round with shots going off. Women scream in terror as they fight. Bruno punches a baby, but Guy saves him from falling off the treacherously fast carousel. An old man crawls under the merry-go-round to stop it, and then it flies off the rails, crashing and destroying families. Bruno is stuck under a horse. He sticks to his story and dies, but the lighter is in his hand. Guy phones Anne with his innocence, and a man says hello on a train, and they run away.
Okay, I just have one qualm with your summary.
Okay.
You mentioned that Bruno's mother is a sweethearted lady. We've seen her painting of a supposed saint. That woman is deeply troubled. She is
Deeply
haunted.
troubled,
Yes.
Her mental illnesses don't affect her spirit, Tyler.
I mean, she gave Guy a manicure, and that's an accomplice to murder. That's like
true.
She's polishing the murder weapon.
She made them the killing machines that they became.
So, Casey, you brought this movie to our attention. I think who directed this again?
I don't know.
Oh man, I'm trying to remember.
Spielberg?
Oh yeah.
You guys are like, I'm legitimately blanking here. Alfred frickin' Hitchcock.
Never mind. We'll get to this.
Part of every film history class. Anyway, this is one I hadn't seen, and I thoroughly enjoyed it. Just tell us kind of why you chose this one.
So it's a little bit interesting. This was actually the very first Hitchcock movie that I ever saw. I saw it when I was probably about 14 or 15. And I don't know what it was, but it was honestly like, I mean, since I've seen almost every Hitchcock movie that he's made since then, like this is the movie that I was locked in, like how he just portrayed suspense and how he got me to believe this story where I was like, oh yeah, that's fully believable. But then I don't know. It just was one of those things that I know not everybody had seen this movie. I talked a lot with Tyler to be like, oh, I kind of want to do a Hitchcock movie. I want to do Psycho, but everybody's seen Psycho. Maybe people haven't seen Strangers on a Train, so let's do that one. And so as I was watching it, it really came back to the time that I first saw it because it had been so many years since I had really watched through this. And I was like, yeah, this movie's really freaking good. Like, I can't believe what he was able to portray and how he took not necessarily risks, but what his decisions that he made in some of the shots that he took, like very beginning of the movie, he just shows the shoes as they're walking through the train station. And you are completely like, what the hell's going on here? And you know, you have this really nice set of black and white shoes that are really shiny, and you know this person's come from money. And then somebody that has, you know, all black shoes, but they're tracked on a little bit. You know, he's kind of putting himself together, and then you don't see their faces. You see no faces, and then they get on the train, and then I like how you said, Mitch, like they played footsie, and then they knocked each other, and then that's the first time you see faces, and they're just connecting. And it's one of those things that I felt like Hitchcock really showed you how a chance encounter can really make things happen. So it's just one of those things that rewatching this, I was like, oh yeah, this is a great movie, great shots, great tricks that he does, and all back in the early 50s when he was doing this. So the technology and everything. Now I would love to see what Hitchcock could have done today. Really,
Yeah, I think it's interesting to note too, like contextually, like this is before probably what the movies that people would consider Hitchcock's best. You know, this is before Vertigo's, before North by Northwest, Rear Window, Psycho, like all of that stuff came after this, and this really does feel like a pretty defining film for him as a filmmaker, kind of between like the stuff he's doing before and everything that came after. So.
Yeah, and one of the things that I really like learned about this film, you know, after I started getting into Hitchcock was Hitchcock was working in Europe for a long time, and he had been making movies. He had come over to the United States and made, you know, a couple of movies. One that I really like, it's called Rope. It's based off of a play, and basically it's just a bottle episode where everything's done in one room and it's just the dialogue. And that was actually Farley Granger's first film with Hitchcock, and he plays Guy in this film, Farley Granger. And I think he just does a really good way, or he has a really good way of using the dialogue and his delivery on things to keep things in suspense. And he does a really good job on that Rope film. But then this was the first film that Hitchcock got for I believe it was at least a 5-movie deal through Warner Brothers. And this was the first movie he put through. So it was one of those things where he had read this book. He thought, I can change this. I can make some really cool adjustments to it. And yeah, so it was just really cool. And it just brings me back to that. At like 14 and 15 was really when I like felt like I was becoming a movie buff. I started watching all these unique films, and it was, I don't know, it just kind of a resurgence in what I was trying to expand my horizons on a lot of things here. So
yeah, cool.
Were you scared of carousels after this?
No, because I always found that carousel scene kind of funny because like, and I only say funny because it's like the stupid cop, he's chasing after Guy, just shoots randomly, and he just happens to hit the carousel worker.
Yeah, we definitely need to talk about the logistics of that scene.
Yeah,
that might be where the technology held him back the most. Like, you could tell some things were sped up for the carousel. Like, that carousel looks like it's moving. Yeah. And then the way it comes off, it's like, would that have actually? And there's no other way to stop it. It was a little tough, and it just kept going and going. But that kid was just having a great time until he punched him.
Seems like a great time to have in the 50s. So I guess I do want to get Tyler and Gwen. I kind of want to get your like backgrounds with Hitchcock as well. I've seen most of the bigger ones. I had seen Strangers on a Train, but like prior to that, there's not much. I mean, I've seen like 39 Steps because they also made a play of that, which I think is better than a movie.
Were you in it?
No. But yeah, Gwen, so what's your experience with Hitchcock coming into this? You hadn't seen this prior to this, right?
It was one of the ones I did watch.
Oh, okay, it is.
The
okay.
one class I had in college that was Hitchcock and Poe, but I completely got it mixed up with North by Northwest and was waiting for the tunnel scene, and it never happened, and I was really confused.
Just a different tunnel scene that might be superior, depending on who you ask, but yeah.
Right.
Yeah, I really enjoyed it. It was a good watching experience.
Cool. And Tyler, what Hitchcock have you seen? I'm not
the first one I ever saw was The Birds when I was like 11, 12, and I thought it was the most boring movie I'd ever seen in my life. And I haven't seen it since, so like it's one of those things that's like my opinion on that has always been, oh yeah, that movie sucks. And then like until I think, would I feel the same way? So I don't know. So I don't know if I'd count that, but I've seen The Birds, I've seen Psycho, I've seen Rear Window, and now this, I think. So I've seen 4 total
Okay,
now. Cool. So not a ton, but a little versed. And
yeah.
You should revisit The Birds.
Yeah, I no, I definitely want to. I just I totally forgot that I'd seen it until tonight. I just remembered.
Yeah.
I was like sick. I rented it from the library on VHS, and I was like, why do people like this movie?
I remember being scared of The Birds.
I weirdly wasn't. I was a pansy. I was scared of everything. Like, is that PC to say? Can you say pansy anymore? I don't know anymore.
Who's PC? Who's not woke now?
I'll give you your pansy pass.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. I can say that.
He would be the offended party.
But yeah, no, I definitely want to give it another shot. I love his other work. I mean, Psycho definitely has... It doesn't need any more smoke blowing up its ass, but I love that movie, and I think it's fantastic, and I especially just like the pioneering in cinematography, editing, pacing is the thing I probably love most about Hitchcock's work. Yeah. But there's countless other things you could talk about too.
Yeah. Let's Justin, like your experience with Hitchcock, I just want to kind of get that too. Have you seen like quite a bit, or is this?
I honestly don't know.
Oh, okay.
I feel like I've watched some Hitchcock movies, but I have not seen Psycho. I have not seen The Birds.
Okay.
Like Rear Window, I haven't seen. I feel like I have watched Hitchcock before.
Yeah.
but I don't remember what I watched.
Yeah.
So
there's definitely enough like out there beyond the normal ones that you know is Hitchcock that you could have very inadvertently just watched a Hitchcock movie. At
Literally
some point.
tonight, I was like, "Oh, Vertigo is Hitchcock."
Yeah,
because I really like Vertigo. I had to watch it in a film class in college, and it was enjoyable.
Yeah. Well, and so Tyler, I mean, you guys have seen a bunch of movies that have all been based off of what he has done. You know, like, and so if you were to go back and look and watch like the base, you know, for Rear Window, for example, has been remade 100 times, and like most recently, we probably all saw it, Disturbia with Shia LaBeouf. Like, I mean, that was just taking it to a whole new level, kind of modernizing it, and I think it's a good movie. But if you go back and rewatch Rear Window and how he just put it basically on a stage, one set, and then you just have Jimmy Stewart and Grace Kelly, and they're just watching it, and it all develops. It's amazing because like really nothing is happening, nothing is going on, but he's causing all this suspense just with their dialogue and the music and just the tension he's able to build. And I think he really does that in this movie too, because every time you see Guy and he's with his girl and they're walking around, all of a sudden you see Bruno, and it's just like he's off in the distance and he's just staring at you, and you're just like, holy shit, this guy is nuts.
Yeah. That the shot that really sticks with me from this movie. Well, first of all, when Bruno's watching him when he's in the stands of the tennis match.
Oh yeah.
But then also when he's standing on the steps of the Lincoln Memorial, and I guess that's what that is. It's just so far away, but he's just that black
and his stance.
Yeah.
And,
oh man,
He's
so good.
He's a visual master, and I actually like the way that this is written as like not necessarily a mystery, but like a where are we going with this? I love how he holds you in suspense, and some of it is actually predicated on not having technology, and that's why some of those updates are interesting when you have to factor that in. And it gets a little convoluted. I think that all old acting has this over the topness to it, but these characters have like these genuine undertones, and he says so much without words. You talked about that one where he's standing in the black and he just happens to be in the distance, but the way he's just a master of framing and early sound. Like all that music is just subconsciously bringing you along that mood and everything, and it's really done. I wanted to compliment like the writers, because there are like 3 screenplay credits and a story credit on this that are not him, but it had just the right amount of complexity, and that's where I think movies like this today go wrong.
Yeah, I do want to talk about the writing credits on this movie, because this is based on a book by Patricia Highsmith, I believe. Is her name.
She was the one with the story credit.
Yeah, and she also wrote The Talented Mr. Ripley, and Carol, the movie that came out a few years ago with Cate Blanchett and Rooney Mara. She also wrote that story. But Raymond Chandler was the screenwriter who was hired to write this, which, you know, Raymond Chandler's a big deal. He wrote Double Indemnity, Big Sleep, tons of stage plays. Birdman, that's the play that they're doing a Raymond Chandler play. But anyways, he did 2 drafts, and Hitchcock hated it so much that he changed the entire thing. But the studio still put Raymond Chandler's name on it because they were like, we need to sell tickets, and like this will get people to the theater. So that's an awesome dumb thing.
And it was Warner Brothers being like, like you said, we need to sell tickets. How many big names can we put on this? Because Hitchcock, he kind of had a name, but it was more like world known, like not necessarily in the United States yet. He had done a couple of things, so they were really trying to just toss everything that they had at this movie to be like, oh yeah, Raymond Chandler did that. Everybody reads that dude's books. They've heard about his stuff. Because I mean, Raymond Chandler could be considered one of the guys that started modern detective novels. You know, like how they're portrayed and everything like that. So that's one of the biggest names at that time of writing stories and things like that. So you could definitely tell, let's throw all our shit at it. We got what can we do to help this out?
Yeah.
Well, it still happens today. I mean, everyone is like, it says Zack Snyder, but actually we brought this other guy in to write some things. You're like, Tony Gilroy ghost writes half of the movies in Hollywood, and then they leak it or something, and it's gonna be good. Yeah,
it's really funny. But yeah, I do want to talk about. Let's talk about some of the characters in this movie, because I do think. One of the things I love about Hitchcock stuff is there's always so much style and there's always so much like great filmmaking going on, and then there's also interesting characters. And I think that you set this against a lot of the movies that we know from that time, and that's what sets these movies apart. Is like the characters, the performances feel so distinct and unique from other things. But let's start with a smaller character. Let's talk about Barbara.
Babs.
Yeah, Babs.
The 13-year-old, 30-year-old.
Yeah. Indiscriminate age. But I think it's funny watching this now. Also, this idea of the obsession with morbid, true crime stuff, I feel like just reflects our time even more.
Yeah.
I don't know, like especially over the last 5 years, this movie feels more prescient, I think, than I initially thought it would be, for sure.
Her and Bruno's interest, like the way Bruno talks about, of course, it's creepy. He's a wonderful character we'll talk about, but her interest in it and her observations and the little side things she throws out, it just reminds me of, actually, I saw Knives Out 2 days ago.
Okay. Yeah.
And the sister of the main character is watching like a soap novella at the very beginning, and that's the only time she shows up, or maybe a little bit after like things blow up, but her mom's like, shut that off, and she's like obsessed with this little thing. And I was like, that is the same thing as what Babs is doing here.
Yeah.
She's like, I read this in the paper, I heard about this, and then when it actually starts to come, she's very present with it. And you're right, it is like the perfect, with Serial and so many things on Netflix these days being that true crime. It's so interesting to see her captivated by it and then be embroiled in it and be a side character. Her and Anne are also really not your generic 50s female characters, They could have done more, but I think they are both super awesome.
Yeah. And also both they both are actually very good detectives. Like they figure out like,
and they take
figures
action.
that out. Yeah. And confronts Guy, and that's that's a really cool scene to me. I really like that, and I like their I think that actually strengthens their relationship in a way. It makes me buy into that relationship more. Like it makes me care about it. And
Guy he's not a dummy, but he is like a little bit of like your leading guy who is he's just a tennis player. He's just another guy. Like you almost see his weaknesses in the way he gives into emotion and the way he gets frustrated. And he never tries to do anything too clever, but he reacts like a person kind of really would. And I think they do a good job of not trying to make him complex, but he's also not the dumb pretty boy tennis player that is just getting manipulated. His involvement in the plot is like perfect. And you just realize as Bruno spins the web, I think his reactions work perfectly to make Bruno become this more and more morbid character.
Yeah. I think you're absolutely right, Mitch, because it's like, I mean, it would be that conversation that you have with a complete stranger, right? Like somebody meets you, you're stuck with them for a couple of hours, and they're just having this conversation telling you like, oh yeah, have you ever heard of this? Like, what do you think about this? Like, we could switch murders. It's a double cross, and nobody would ever be the wiser because we have no connection. And it's like, and then Farley Granger or Guy is like, yeah, I mean, that makes sense. You're trying to stroke the ego of this random person that you've never met before. And you're just like, yeah, I mean, that makes sense. But you're going to play it off because he has that conversation with Anne. He goes, I didn't make two thoughts about it. It was like, of course, that's crazy. Why would I? Of course I want somebody offed, but I'm not going to just full on say, yeah, let's switch murders. Like I'm in, I'm going to just kill your person too.
Yeah.
So,
and it's when he calls him where Bruno seems to like, not that, I mean, he was already twisted. He was probably already in it, but he was like, he almost took that as permission. What was interesting to me is he knew so much about him. And I just wonder, I don't think it was off the cuff. I think it was intentional. Like
I
with
felt that way.
how much he knew about it. But I kind of like that there's at least a chance that this guy just saw this C-level celebrity and knew what was going on from the tabloids and was like, and he's a psycho. And if you're a psycho, like you go up and that just embroils. But like you said, it could just be a stranger interaction. There was talk in 2015 of Fincher doing a remake of this. And what I thought was, one, it gets a little overcomplicated with technology, and he would make it so psychoanalytical. I actually don't think I'd enjoy it, even though I love Fincher, but I just thought that coincidence and that intention is something that Fincher would pull from.
Yeah. Well, I mean, Fincher did Gone Girl, which is very
that's what
Hitchcockian, and it's like
he did a movie called Girl on a Train, right? Or was that just another Gone Girl?
That was
that
just
came
another
out around the same time.
Yeah.
Different author though.
Yeah. But yeah, it really is. That stuff really is interesting, and like it's funny you're talking about like, you know, he probably knows a lot about this guy, and I'm like, immediately what I thought was like, if this movie was released in 2015 and it did well, in 2017 we get a movie about him stalking him and finding out all that stuff because it would just be more money to make on this. But
we're gonna do the prequel of him stalking your Instagram, your TikTok.
All his tennis TikToks. Oh man, there've got to be some good tennis TikToks. just imagine the loop of just like a tennis ball getting hit, just like you do all kinds of cool shit with that. Copyright, trademark, whatever. It's my intellectual property now.
Oh, I feel like I kind of busted up
on Facebook first.
Okay, I'm doing it right now.
We'll talk about Bruno separate, but I feel like I kind of busted up the character discussion. Tyler, did you have a favorite character? Anyone we haven't talked about, or anything insight we haven't looked at with some of these?
I mean, if we're talking about Bruno later, no, because like Bruno is by far and away my favorite part of this movie.
Yeah.
And honestly, it's mostly the performance.
We can do it now.
So good.
Kick it off.
I think that, the character itself is interesting. I think Hitchcock has a very fascinating view on mental health, and I mean, almost to the point of being insensitive in some cases. But I don't give a shit about that. And I've got depression and anxiety. I can say that.
Can I say that?
You can now say that too.
Thank you. It's so free.
But it's interesting how I don't know if it's his directing or just the performance he gets, because both this and Psycho are my favorite Hitchcock performances of the two antagonists. And honestly, this era of filmmaking has a lot of heavy-handedness, and we've talked about how Hitchcock kind of was a pioneer in kind of a little more subtlety. It still, I feel like, is kind of a product of its time, though. I'm a little bit of, I kind of got thrown off at the beginning just because it is so heavy-handed, and if someone were to bring that up, I feel like there needs to be a little bit more easing into it, a little more segue.
You need more foreplay.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Some
I don't like to get right to the murder. I like, but
I mean, he did buy him dinner first.
That is true, and there was the whole blackout before. But I mean, like it was like very like abrupt, and that's apparent through a few performances throughout this movie. I feel like, but I can't remember the actor's name, but the guy who plays Bruno is able to throw a lot of physicality in his performance that is very subtle and but also very unnerving, and it's just in his body language mostly. I mean, obviously his vocal performance, his delivery is great, but I really appreciated his body language throughout all of it, and it made me uneasy just putting myself being in the other characters, but being around this guy. That really pushed the uneasiness of the film for me even further than it was already presented.
Yeah.
And I really appreciate that about Bruno. I feel like, all the other, I mean, I think he just kind of overshadowed everyone for me, to be honest.
Yeah. I think one of the interesting things to note, like if you do look at Psycho and this, and look at like Norman Bates and Bruno Antony, they both feel like actors who are cast against type in those roles, because they have faces that you're and mannerisms and attitudes that immediately you're kind of like, okay, this seems like a nice guy, maybe a little like breaching my personal space a little bit, but he seems like a nice guy. And then you realize that's just the tool that they use. Like I think that's what's so unnerving about them, is that is their main weapon, is like that charm.
Like that discussion at the party. Like, he's being charming, he's being sweet, he's being simple, and slowly he builds a conversation about murder from being like, of course I would never want to kill anyone, to being like, oh, wouldn't you? Here's how I would do it. Can I show you? Like, the way that builds is just believable enough that it's unnerving but fascinating to watch.
Yeah.
Those two old ladies bought in real quick.
Yeah.
I mean, have you met an old lady?
Yeah, well, I was
You're
gonna
right. My
say,
husband does deserve to die.
One of my takeaways is that I need a hobby before I get old so that I don't get drawn into a Bruno situation.
So you're not just hiring your driver to drive you around the city hoping cops come into
Right.
your vehicle.
Exactly.
You start dropping responsibilities. Next thing you know, there's a guy at a party with his hands around your throat.
I
Not in
loved
a
those
fun
two
way.
old ladies, though. They were
Not
like the lady with the huge necklace, her just like giggly energy.
Yeah.
She was fun.
Yeah,
And
oh, yeah.
so awkward.
But
That was
probably
one of the
realistic
parts.
for like a ritzy little party where
Yeah.
everyone's drink a little bit. There's like that's their societal social time, and yeah.
I mean, I feel like you know that guy. I mean, not quite on Bruno's level of insanity, but you know that guy at events or in your workplace who just doesn't have those social boundaries, but who also says funny shit that you're like, yeah, I'll put up with this so I can hear some crazy shit. And that's who he is, and he pulls it off perfectly.
Yeah. I actually do want to note some stuff about that actor because he died a few months after this movie came out.
Really?
And he's from Ogden, Utah, and is actually buried in Ogden. I learned tonight, actually. But yeah. Yeah, at the same cemetery that a lot of my family is buried at. So I'm like,
Are you gonna go visit? his
I
grave?
don't know.
You
I
should. It would
thought
be weird
that,
if
and
you
then I was
did.
It's like he could be
is
related
that-
to you.
Is that
I'm
the
saying.
best tribute that I could pay to Bruno Antony? Is visiting his grave and like leaving a lighter there or something?
Oh my god!
Oh, that's
Playing
different.
a lighter
That
on
is
the
my
grave.
first one.
Yeah, just go give that headstone a high five and a pound it and leave a lighter there. He was like, great job. Great job.
Oh man, yeah, this is so good. But yeah, I think that I think is one of those things that Hitchcock really does bring like a lot of naturalism, not only in the performance, but like also this movie feels kind of on the cusp of that era where you're moving out of the studio and you're moving on location, and that's really apparent in this movie. I think any opportunity they had to shoot on location, it feels like they took that opportunity. Even shooting at Penn Station for that, that scene and everything and all that is, it really does feel like kind of that break, a good like heralding of a new era of film in a really great way. But yeah, I guess Casey, you've talked a little bit about Guy. I want to talk about him as a character a little bit more. Because I think that we've kind of talked about he's an interesting protagonist and kind of victim in this because for a large chunk of the movie, he's not super proactive other than just avoiding and hanging up the phone or like maybe the largest actions he takes.
Yeah. One of those things that's really interesting. And it's like, I feel like Hitchcock does try and get you into the mind of Guy, because if you were to think, oh, this is a normal person, he just goes about his day, he plays tennis, he's thinking about a political career because if he marries Anne and he's got the senator as his father-in-law, all these kind of things. So he's thinking about his life moving forward, but now all of a sudden he's stuck with this situation of this guy is kind of like badgering him at all times, and he's coming after him. And it's like, what would he do? I'm a simple guy. I'm going to hang up. I'm going to not give two thoughts about this. If I ignore this, it'll all go away. And I think that's a very common approach that a lot of people would take. Instead of being proactive, he's just like, oh, I'm just going to avoid this. I know I have nothing to do with this. All that happened was, I had this conversation. This guy told me, oh yeah, I'll kill your ex-wife. You kill my dad. Now he's killed my ex-wife. What the hell is going to happen? Plus, right away he was like, he wanted to do the right thing. Because Bruno shows up that night and says, yeah, it's all done. Hands him the glasses, says, I killed her. Which the glasses scene on the island where Hitchcock shoots the kill inside the lens, that's beautiful. That's one of those things where I was like, wow, that is so striking of how it's just silhouettes and you don't really see anything happen, but it's like, wow, that's pretty badass shot. Like what's going on there.
Yeah.
But he hands the glasses, and then he's like stuck in this situation because he instantly says, I'm going to go to the cops. And Bruno's such a manipulator. He instantly is like, you can't do that. All I have to say is, you're with me. And even if I'm caught, like, you came up with this. You have the motive, all these kind of things. So it's like instantly in his mind, because he doesn't think about these things, he's like, I'm stuck. Now all I need to do is avoid it. So I don't know. It's just kind of interesting.
He only actually needs to lie so much. Like, he embellishes a couple things and turns a couple things, but all he really has to do is bring in a couple of these things and frame it so that a normal person, because the thing is, Guy has no control. So for Bruno, the thing is to just show him that there's nothing you can do about it. And you see that I would call it violent manipulation pretty often. And I don't know what came before Hitchcock, but I wonder how much he's part of the growth of that and how it's used so often in movies, TV today, where you have the aggressor who's taking an innocent person and convincing them that there's no other path out. I actually thought at one point he was just going to start going to the cops, be like, he's going to go plant this and try and preempt him, and he didn't go to that point, but he felt he couldn't go to the cops for so long, and I think after digging through the situation with him and Anne, it might have actually worked.
Yeah.
But I would in this day and age, especially, the way that something is given a storyline, a crime is given a story, you can't, especially when the court of public opinion is involved, if the wrong thing is said, if the tone is set against you, it could be fearful that you'll never have it reversed in your way. And so the fear and the manipulation between them is just impeccably well done. And I think there's a version of this movie where the cops, or say there's a detective like Hanratty from Catch Me If You Can, where we're a little bit more focused on someone chasing these guys. I think there's a version of this movie where that third party gets a lot more time, and I liked that we weren't getting that perspective, even though we knew it was there, and we were sitting in the mind of like the aggressor and the victim. There's obviously, some mixed message to that, but it's impeccably well done.
Well, I think there's a great part where Bruno is manipulating him and explaining that, his circumstances to him, and he then kind of steps away from him to distance himself, but then as he's explaining his situation, it cuts to him, and he's got bars overlaid over his face to kind of symbolize you're trapped, like you are caught here, and that was a really great moment visually, as well as it kind of makes sense, like him wanting to like distance himself, so he does move. It wasn't just like, oh, we need the shot, move over here.
Right, yeah.
There was kind of a reason for it, which is really cool. I couldn't help but think the whole movie that if this movie was remade today, that they would kind of take it in a different direction, to where the movie was more about, like, there was more pushing in the direction of him taking steps to kill his dad to try and get out of it, and leading up to the climactic point of like being at the house.
Yeah.
Well, and that is interesting, because in Patricia Highsmith's book, Guy actually goes through with killing the dad.
Oh,
so
interesting.
That's really interesting.
So, and that was something that, like, it made it so it's like, I really like in this movie that Bruno is like pushing it, but in Patricia Highsmith's book, it was pushed so far that he actually was like, the only way I see out of this is to actually kill the dad, and then they both have a guilty conscience. But Hitchcock made the decision that he didn't want Guy to lose his kind of innocence with it, that it was all of, he has this moral dilemma, this is going on, and he wanted him to kind of be the victor in that. So that's where the two stories really differ, is in one, he goes through with it, and then I don't remember how it ends. I think Guy still figures out a way to kill Bruno, and then they're kind of like left without it. But this one, he didn't want Guy to lose, so Hitchcock wanted Guy to win the whole time. So I thought that was a kind of an interesting spin on it.
Yeah,
but
that is interesting.
What I like about that is, I'm kind of, as we discuss it more, I'm wondering how much Bruno is meant to be. He's obviously unhinged, but I wonder if Guy would have just gone in there and shot who was in the bed thinking it was his dad, I wonder if he would have mind dying knowing Guy was going to get arrested for 2 murders probably. And like the idea that Guy does end up killing his dad in the book, then he has to get away with Bruno getting blamed for both murders, like, it's not that he wants to target Guy, but I wonder if this manipulation and this anger, like, he really even cares about the outcome. I think he's just that psycho. I'm trying not to use that word.
I was wondering it the whole time if, like, he fully believes that he was in on the plan. Like, Bruno believes that, oh yeah, Guy's totally agreeing with me on going along with this. And he's like genuinely shocked that he's not. And that's just a weird circumstance to be in when you're dealing with someone who's so unhinged that, you know, they think that you're on their side. They think you're going to plan a switcheroo murder with them to kill their dad. They're having a heart attack.
One of the classics.
But I mean, he clearly has got issues with his dad. He's definitely got some issues with his mom, which also seems to be another theme in Hitchcock movies. I don't know enough about Hitchcock's life to know if there was something with his mom or mothers in general. If he had a bad Mother's Day one time, I don't know.
If he had a bad Mother's Day, it was a bad time for him. Unfortunately, it was that Mother's Day Sunday. Ugh. I do think I think one of the cool things about talking about this too is for a long time I didn't like horror movies. I don't like horror movies, but I always say, but I like thrillers. And the thing I think is so interesting about, like, when you talk about thrillers in Hitchcock, and specifically this movie, is the thing about horror is the unknown. I feel like, to me, that's what defines horror, is this unknown thing that exists. And usually when a horror movie loses steam for me is when the unknown becomes known, and then everything wraps up and the movie's over. Like, it loses a lot of it there. The thing about this movie or something like Psycho is that you get a lot of time with the villain or the evil force in these movies, and from the beginning, they are a known quantity. Like, that first scene with Guy and Bruno is talking 96% of that scene. Like, there's almost no other lines of dialogue. And so that's so fascinating. But Hitchcock does transform him over the course of that movie. Visually, there's the scene when Bruno first stops Anne and Guy. It's the first time that Anne sees him. We get that beautiful crash zoom on the Bruno lapel pin, which I am absolutely going to Amazon to see if I can find a Bruno lapel pin. But
you
like,
can put that people at
parties.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I'll put a Bruno pin on his grave. But the that whole scene, like the way that they're shot, Bruno is shot against that giant black pillar. And then Guy is framed like equally within just this white background with the fountain in the back. And it's like, it's so, every shot that Bruno is in, I feel like, is more interesting than the other shots in the movie, because that introduces this conflict and this friction in those scenes that is carried across in the performances and visually, which is so good.
When you talk about thrillers being a whodunit or a howdunit, the fact that in this one we have both, and then we're just so interested on how it's going to develop and the mind manipulation on hiding that from not you get to know, but from everyone around you takes a lot. I also want to mention my favorite shot, which is at the tennis match and the first shot is the best because it's a little bit wider and we're just looking at the crowd and I was like, oh, he's going to be in there. And even though I already knew that, once everybody's head turned but his, I literally audibly said something, and then it zooms in and keeps doing it. And yeah, play it up because it's awesome. Yeah. Because that tennis sequence it's weirdly paced, but man, it's worth it just for that. Yeah, it was so good.
That's so good.
Oh, go
ahead, Casey.
Yeah, well, just on that tennis shot, it's one of those things where it's like that. As an actor, like Robert Walker, as he's doing that, I'm sure that was super hard to just watch everybody be like, I mean, they're probably counting and everybody's moving left to right. And he's just so stoic. And it's one of those things where you talked about earlier how he has this kind of like nice, kind of charming looking face. And I think Anthony Perkins has that same look in Psycho, but they are just straight sociopaths. Like, that is what they're playing. And so that nothing bothers them. They're just locked in on what they're doing. And it's just boom. And that shot, yeah, Mitch, I remember seeing that at 14 and being like, holy shit, this guy is insane. But yeah, it's one of those things that's always stuck with me. It's one of the things I remember about this movie from the beginning. And another one of those shots that I was like, Farley Granger in his mind, like, because we're coming from the mind of Guy Haynes, he has to be like, oh my gosh, who is this guy? Like, he is just locked in on me, and I'm not even playing tennis right now. He, like, what is going on? I don't know. It's just one of those things that just blows me away.
Yeah.
Blows me away.
It's really great. It's such a great example of using the visuals to enforce that dynamic that we get in 10 other ways.
Really fast.
yeah,
Can we
go
go
ahead.
back to the scene outside of Guy's apartment after Bruno has killed Miriam? And at first they're on opposite sides of the gate. And then once Guy realizes that he can't go to the police and the police come, he moves around the gate to the same side as Bruno. Mm-hmm. And like, it's not super subtle, but I think that might have been my favorite moment in the movie. Like, oh, he's in it now.
Yeah.
He has brought him over into the plot.
That's a very good analysis.
Yeah, for sure.
Did we already talk about this?
No, while you were gone,
Damn it.
I mentioned it.
No, but yes, but that
I just wanted to compliment you. That's a very good analysis.
you broke it down well.
Only smart people would have brought that up.
I just loved it, okay?
Yeah,
it was
no,
great.
it is a great scene.
It's worth mentioning a third time.
So.
Okay. Well,
I do want to talk about the tennis scene too, because
Greatest tennis match in history?
yeah, is this the best sports movie released in 1951? Yes,
Absolutely.
but the that whole sequence, it's so funny because I feel like that is a sequence that you will find in plenty of modern films. This idea of like juxtaposing these unrelated conflicts to two people who are in conflict, away from that. And but the way that this is done is so much longer than it would be in a modern movie.
Oh, gosh, yeah.
Like the beginning of that is literally just tennis with no audience clapping, which I don't know. Is tennis a golf-like sport where it's
there's
when we
clapping
finish
after
the game? Yeah, right. That's
After
right,
every point, there's clapping.
But in the 50s, was it? I don't know.
Well, there's one point when we hear clapping but don't see it.
Yes.
But they show a full game. Like, they show, 6 points in a row, and then
entire
we're like
thing.
1 set in, and then 2 sets, and then he's doing bad. And it's a little confusing.
Well, but I do think it gets stronger as it goes on. And again, it's a thing that I'm like, I can't think of a modern director who would make that choice and pull it off in a way that would work. I feel like the way that you do that is you shorten it and you ramp up faster. You know what I mean?
Well, you intercut it, and then, you move your music forward, and then all of a sudden the points are bigger.
Yeah.
There's more of this going on. And so it's a pace thing that I think could be done.
Yeah.
If you need a list of good tennis movies, just
You could Terrence Malick it and have it be that long, but it doesn't just have poetry whispered over it.
Yeah, I mean, it would just be you just replace his hand reaching for a lighter with hands through wheat, right? And so like solar flare, like the sun shining through it. Yeah,
But it would literally be like, we go pace of the ball, just getting hit, and then all of a sudden we're with him running through the amusement park or something like.
Yeah.
So I like the. It could have been
see
done.
like that kid on the carousel that we won't see for
He was
another
there for
30
about.
minutes.
He rode that shiz for 9 hours. His mom got her money's worth. I did want to talk about his face real quick because we kept saying he looks a little bit like Kevin Spacey. I also think he has some Kyle MacLachlan in him. I think
Bruno
if those two had a baby, I think it would kind of look like him.
Okay,
and
yeah.
it's weirdly charming, but just creepy. Now the whole Kevin Spacey thing made it even creepier because he's such a good creep. And then we found he's a real life creep.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Kevin Spacey's come up on this podcast a lot.
I know.
It's weird.
So much.
And we've covered like 4
we were
of his
watching
movies.
so many Kevin Spacey movies right before
Yeah.
all that shit came out. That was crazy. Okay. Anyways.
I remember sending you a text about, did you guys make the right choice?
Yeah. No, we didn't.
Stand by enjoyment of some of those films.
But yeah, I think... I mean, is there anything else? We've kind of talked about a lot of stuff like characters and filmmaking wise. Is there anything else that you guys like are dying to talk about kind of with this movie?
I thought it was interesting, Mitchell, that you brought up the music and how it moved you along emotionally because it really felt kind of corny to me and would take me out of the moment. But the it's not overdone, but the the era acting I got used to really fast and was very comfortable with throughout the film, but I don't know. I didn't get used to the
part
music.
of that for me, and I'm not saying I've watched a ton of old films because I really haven't, and I don't know how many you have, but the music section of a film class I took in college, we focused on House on Haunted Hill, and the music is way too loud and way too dramatic, but it really, really creates so much of the feeling, and so I think that's pretty normal in older movies for it to maybe sometimes bring you out. I actually think a good modern comparison is The Farewell. This year, there's this orchestral ending that actually really took me out of it and was annoying, but when I watched it a second time, and it reminded me of older movies, and so for me, it just harkened back to that. And there are certainly moments where it was annoying, but I think like you were able to slide in with characters, the music slid in for me fairly early. But absolutely, because I hadn't watched a movie this old in a while, it was jarring. But I definitely see how it could be unpleasant at times.
Well, I think it's interesting I think in both those cases, the thing I immediately think of is it's a lack of subtlety, right?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And it's always interesting because I feel like that's just how we've evolved is like like people who watch films now is like, that language feels so second nature to me. Like I feel like, and so it is really interesting to think about, not too long ago when people watched a video of a train coming directly towards the camera and lost their goddamn minds. And like, it's so interesting. And I will say one of my favorite moments in this movie, just for the sheer ridiculousness of it, is when Bruno looks at the painting his mom has done and laughs for 3 minutes. And is like, it's Dad. And then the like camera cuts and there's just like the music's like,
Joaquin Phoenix is it.
It's so insane. Yeah. I love it. But yeah, anything else do we want to touch
Critical
on?
thoughts?
Do you have anything?
Did you have anything you wanted to say about the production of the Ferris wheel scene at the end?
Yeah, I did.
You
Thanks
mentioned
for reminding
something
me
about that.
Any Wikipedia research I had
Carousel,
before I Google this shit?
So the guy who the hero, let's call him the hero / the well-intentioned murderer of children that climbs under the moving carousel at the end of this movie.
Survive?
Probably not. He is the actual man who set that carousel up for this shot. And then Hitchcock was like, faster. And then he's like, well, now we've got to get someone in there. Like, we've got to get shots of someone going under that thing because we need to do it here now. And that guy was like, I guess I can crawl under it. And Hitchcock was quoted in an interview of saying, yeah, if he had lifted his head up at all, this movie would have been a horror instead of a thriller, which makes me think Hitchcock would have just put it in the movie and been like, yeah, this is way more fucked up than you thought it was going to be, huh? And that's insane to me.
See, I'd never heard of that. I thought, that's amazing.
What if his decapitated head gets thrown into the middle and breaks up the cogs and throws it off? It would have worked.
It's somehow the safer way to end the movie. We've got a trolley problem here. We've got the life of a man under a carousel or the lives of 7 children who have done nothing at this point, contributed nothing.
They might have been on the naughty list. We don't know.
Yeah. Anyways, that's an insane... definitely a thing that would not happen on the set of a movie today.
Sure.
In America, at least.
Oh, man. Yeah, I do want to... Oh, sorry, go ahead.
No, I was just I'm thinking in my head, that's insane. That is insane. Because that whole scene when that old man who looks like the bitter beer face guy is crawling underneath. He's crawling underneath, and he just keeps looking back, and you're just like, oh, yeah, this guy, I mean, everything's fine. He's just spinning over his head. Like, yeah, I've done this 100 times. I'm going to just army crawl under this thing. Like,
what's the stuntman's OSHA? Because
Also, it's worth noting, someone at some point while he was crawling under a moving carousel was like, okay, no, hold right there. Okay, now pull out your handkerchief and wipe your forehead. But don't lift your hand up too high. Like, keep it real low or it's gone, bud.
How many takes
that's... it's stuff like that makes me think, like, there's that whole scene where they're like, all right, now turn around and look behind you for like 20 seconds. Like, Oh yeah, you got it. You nailed it, man. Good job.
So ridiculous. Man, movies used to be cool.
That makes that scene way more badass than it is.
No, so good. So good. Well, cool. Well, should we, I guess that kind of wraps up our discussion of Strangers on a Train.
Man, what killer back-to-back weeks with Blade Runner 2049 and Strangers on a Train.
Yeah. I mean, really.
Come from the same cloth.
Yeah.
Similar.
Yeah. Very similar.
Anyway, next week we're going to watch a Christmas classic, Home Alone, with Amber Sorensen's going to be our guest. So come on back for that. And then, and we're going to we're going to take a little break and do some recommendations. So hang around. But Tyler, if someone does tune out but they want to stay in touch with us, how can they do that?
Oh, hey, they could email us at rewatchersonthepod@gmail.com or reach out to us on Twitter or Instagram at rewatcherspod or at our tax shelter company, CBA Productions, on Facebook. Joke's not going to get old for me.
You can also, we are available on YouTube, correct?
Oh, yeah, we are on YouTube. Yes, thank you. I always forget. But yeah, all of our stuff is up on YouTube as well.
Oh.
So go check it out. Subscribe to us. Hit that bell. Is that what they say?
Subscribe,
Yeah,
like, and
it's a-
review.
it's a bell.
That's what you need to do.
Yeah.
I think you smash the like button and hit the bell.
Yes. Yeah, don't smash the bell. I'm sorry. Don't
You
do
gotta
that.
get it right.
Yes, absolutely.
All right.
But yeah.
Cool. Let's take a quick second here, and then we're going to recommend some stuff. Welcome back to the Rewatchers on the Pod. This is the recommendation section where we talk about what we've been watching lately when we're not watching beautiful movies that we get to discuss with all of our wonderful friends.
Beautiful man. Mitchell.
We need the live stream on YouTube as well so people can see your reactions to my words.
It's just you were gone for so long and now you're back. And oh man, I missed you.
You were gone so long. I texted Tyler, was like, does Mitch still do this
Did
thing?
Mitchell fall out of did he fall out of grace with the
And
podcast
I
gods?
told him we got divorced so that we could each have an extra.
Oh
ex-wife.
man, my third, your fourth. It's we're killing it. Crap, I had something I really wanted to recommend, and I can't remember what it is. Well, let's start with what I saw in theaters. I saw Knives Out. Lots of fun. I thought this was right up my alley. I'm probably not I feel like the world is pretty high on this movie right now.
Yeah.
I liked it a lot, but it wasn't like an all-timer. I'm super excited about it for me. I saw Jumanji 2, because I really enjoyed Jumanji 1, and man, it's exactly what you want. It's that same, if you like, it is what it is, and it's a really enjoyable time at the theater. I feel like there's some judgment coming, but it's Fast and the Furious. Like, you just know what you're going to get this dumb rock comedy. The Rock is doing a Danny DeVito impression for at least 90 minutes, and I found it delightful.
I feel like the thing that can make it better if the proportions were flipped. If it was Danny DeVito doing a rock impression for 90 minutes, I'd buy 6 tickets.
Exactly. I can't get enough of Danny DeVito.
One for you, one for Mitchell, and your 4 cheating whore ex-wives.
It is the holidays. It's that time of year when you get real lonely and you call up the exes.
Oh, no. Okay.
My important recommendation is Watchmen. And the thing is, I think I'm the only one here who's seen it, but I know you guys have all read it. And I said it was really good right away, and nothing has changed. Every episode is so different and so good. The finale is tonight, and all I've seen so far is a positive response. Of course, not spoiling anything, but episode 8 is legitimately one of my 10 favorite episodes of television of all time.
Oh, wow.
It's up there with the season 6 finale of Game of Thrones, with like the constant from Lost. Like, it is incredible. And yeah, I can't say enough about how interesting it is. And every episode of the show is so different in kind of the way that Master of None or Atlanta are. Like, you're following the same very serialized, tight-knit story, but every episode is so different. And it is, I think it's 9 hours. I think it's a masterpiece. I'm excited to read the graphic novel, or 12 issues, I guess, whatever it is, after this. But like, I'm gonna go home and I'm gonna be up way too late tonight because I feel like I can't wait to watch this show, and so I can't give it a higher recommendation. And I'm interested what you guys think, because I like watching things with you and respect your opinion, but you know these characters. And I think what Lindelof has been is amazing, and a lot of my friends who have read it do, but I'll know there's always going to be some backlash when you're messing with a world that exists. But yeah, like a home run from HBO, and right now there's not set to be a second season, and I think that would be perfect. Please leave this alone and let it be.
I'd be shocked if they did that, but that sounds like it'd be really cool. If they did just do like a 10 episode thing,
it would be
really
ballsy,
cool.
yeah. But if Lindelof doesn't want to do more, then I don't want more, and I don't know how it's going to end. I think right now, as of 8 of 9 episodes, I can completely see a second season. But the way they're saying is it ends, and there are so many things I wish would have ended more tight knit that I'm kind of hoping they do it with this.
Cool. Yeah, I'm excited to watch it. I'm probably gonna watch it now that all the episodes.
No,
I have a hard time watching week to week.
But that's don't you miss the anticipation a little bit?
No.
Oh
No,
my god.
not really.
Me either. It drives me nuts.
There's too much stuff to watch.
Yeah.
Exactly.
It's so weird for me, the week to week. So Disney Plus is doing the week to week, and I really like. I enjoy The Mandalorian. It definitely wasn't as strong after the first 3 episodes, but I like High School Musical, the musical series. That's legitimately the name of it. But there's also one called The Imagineering Story, which is, I'm a huge Disney World nerd, so watching them actually Imagineer the rides and everything, like incredible storytelling and ingenuity, learning about Walt and everything. Even if it's a Disney production, so you kind of don't get the dark side, which there's a lot of YouTube series with the good side. But every Friday morning I wake up and I'm like, it's so weird that they're dropping these on Friday morning, but I'm anticipating them. So the last couple of weeks I've watched The Mandalorian before I've gone to work on Friday morning. But like, I enjoy the anticipation, but I need a mix of it. There's things I just want to jump into, like Michael Bay. I watched the first hour of his new movie on Netflix called Six Underground. I know it's not binging, but I was like, the instant gratification of that just popping up right there. It was beautiful. And the Great British Baking Show, I've got like 50 episodes of that, and they're all just waiting for me.
It's pretty great.
All right, Tyler. Sorry, mine went on way too long. So you guys have to be
you're
fast.
good. I am usually the one that goes on the longest, so you guys can go on as long as you want. Make me feel better.
You're giving us a pass to do that?
Yeah.
Just passing out.
Apparently, I'm the one who has the passes to give out.
We gave you that.
Most of mine are follow-ups from previous weeks. I did finish Star Wars Jedi Fallen Order, the video game, which is very story-based. And it's interesting. It's something that explores. I'm of the opinion that right now, with the world building that Star Wars has, I think, though this is like a bad word now to say for media, but it's like, I think darker is the way to go. I think there are heavier themes to explore, and this actually does explore them. The only problem is it explores them in a poorly acted, poorly dialogue written way that is hard to buy into those themes, and also the structure is a bit fucked. But that's hard to pull off with video games. So,
well, the movies have fast travel. The game does not.
the game doesn't any fucking
unbelievable.
I mean, even Dark Souls, when you get to a certain point, you can warp to different bonfires. This fucking has nothing. I'm not going back to the depths of Kashyyyk if I to find a fucking poncho unless I can fast travel there. So. But the game's good. I recommend it. Like, if you like video games and you like Star Wars, definitely a buy. Maybe wait till it's on sale. But I enjoyed it. Cool. I guess I've finally come to terms with The Mandalorian is not going to be the show I want it to be. I think episodic is a mistake for that show, especially with the fact that it's like a half hour to 40 minutes. We do have the week wait. Mm-hmm. I feel like I can miss an episode and not be behind technically because. Especially this past episode felt like actors running around the same set for 40 minutes because it literally was. They're on a ship that has like just repeated hallways. And it's
Bill Burr, though.
Here's the thing I will say about this episode: the actors they got for the side characters were much better than the previous episodes.
Natalia Tena is awesome.
Yeah, like the episodes, was it 4 and 5? The side actors, I'm just like, oh, where did you find these people? Like the rejects for your Disney Channel originals, like it was bad. But yeah, I think I've come to terms with that. I will probably finish out this season and watch and wait till I hear about season 2 and like if they are going to go a more structured story with it. If not, I'm probably just gonna if I have nothing else to watch, I'll turn on a random episode because it doesn't seem to matter.
And they're short enough that if you're like, okay, I'm like halfway through season 2, maybe I'll sit down for a day and catch up a few. I'm invested. Not invested. I'm like enjoying just being with that character enough, which I think is impressive. Like, of course, because he's got a helmet on and everything. That I'm like, yeah, I'll go on this little journey with them every week, and I'll really enjoy it. I do. At first, it felt like they had these side, like episode 2, people were like, well, it was a side quest. I was like, but we are learning so much with this character, and I think that they've lost that momentum. They're not throwing enough in. Like, there was one where we kind of got like a little bit about Baby Yoda, and but the whole Baby Yoda thing's just overshadowing the whole show anyway. But I was like, you need to give me tidbits along the way if you're going to be this episode of the week. And because the first 2 especially really felt like we were getting something so interesting, and I wonder if they can lean back into that. Like, we heard Carl, Esposito, what's his first name?
Giancarlo
Esposito. I can't do names today, yeah. Okay. So he was like pitched as like this big character in the season. We've got 2 left, and spoiler alert, so sorry, I don't know if you care, but he hasn't shown up in the show.
Well, it's a lot of things like that. I mean, like, the first episode, there's the guy the second episode, no, actually, that's the third, sorry. Honestly, the second episode, I felt it was cool, but it was such a distraction. It was like, you could cut this out easily. There's like one tiny reveal at the end that's like, we kind of assumed that anyway, so it's like, but so episode 1 and 3 kind of feel like one longer episode to me. And in episode 3, end of 1, actually, there's the scientist guy, and he's wearing, people have pointed out, the stuff he's wearing is like the stuff from the cloners of Camino. Yeah. And like, that's interesting, but we haven't touched it. Like, that's
the problem right there. Is like, okay, if Baby Yoda is a clone of some sort, there is one other canon of Yoda species named Yaddle, apparently. That is interesting. And it's not that I need you to only dwell on that, because his origins is obviously something you're going to hold off on. But you drop that hint so early, and then we just don't touch it.
Yeah. And I'm about to make a very controversial statement. I don't like Samurai Jack. I for some reason on the internet
we just lost every fucking listener. The Venn diagram of our listeners and Samurai Jack lovers is a circle, Tyler. A fucking circle.
I'm out.
I love this show is very similar to that for me. It's a lot of short things that don't like it starts out interesting with an interesting premise, and then just is like, let's find weird unrelated shit we can do for each episode that really doesn't matter. And there's no real character progression, I don't feel like. I think Mando hasn't really had any character progression.
You could say in the episode where he's on the with the farm people.
Yeah. I guess that was just a little too rushed for me.
You sure? Of course.
But I got you. But yeah, both the shows don't hold my interest enough on like a large narrative scale. And I feel like they both suffer from the same things, but also have cool things about them. Yeah. And I've talked enough about this, so I'm going to move on.
Yeah, that turned into like we probably need to talk about the Mandalorian one day.
But I think this will be the last time I probably bring it up. I've come to terms with it's not what I want it to be. That's okay. Star Wars has kind of gone that way for me, so I've come to terms with it. The last thing I had was something. Oh, I finished The Irishman, which was the other follow up I had.
Oh, cool.
And Joe fucking Pesci.
He's so good.
I hope Joe Pesci. Can this thing be nominated? Does this qualify?
Yeah, it ran in theaters.
I want him to win it. I want him to win Best Picture. I want Joe Pesci to win.
Open the envelope and it says Joe fucking Pesci on
it. Holy shit though! Like the scene where he's like, things are kind of coming to a head, and he pulls off a side, and he's like, "Look, I'm not saying this, but like that scene is so cold and just like." He's so calm the entire movie, and I'm scared to death of him.
Yeah.
And he's tiny, and he's old. And, yeah, I don't need to I'd probably say anything more about that. I mean, did you have anything to add to
I just wanted to say I saw someone had shared a story on Twitter. I don't know if it's true, but I want it to be 100%. He said that when he was a child, like when he was like 12 or 13, he recognized Joe Pesci at the airport from Home Alone. Yeah. And so he went up and like said hi, and Joe Pesci like knelt down and was like, "Who's your favorite actor?" And he said, "You are." And Joe Pesci handed him $100 bill and said, "Right answer." And that might be like the most on brand Pesci story I've ever heard. And I want so badly for that to be true. But that's honestly, that's what I feel like when I watch his performance in The Irishman, is that he's kneeling down and handing me $100 cash. Like he's so good. I love him.
I love him even more from that story. Just straight up.
Yeah, it's so good.
Casey, what are you going to recommend to us this week?
So Tyler, you and I used to talk about this a lot, but I started rewatching Community
Hell yeah.
this last month, and I just got through the bad season 4, but then
Sorry.
Oh, the gas leak here?
yeah, the gas leak. Oh, we don't talk about the gas leak. But honestly, that is still every time I rewatch that show, which it's I'm on rewatch like 20, 25. Who knows? I just can't get over how brilliant that show is, from episode 1 of season 1 to the end of season 3, skip season 4, and then 5 to the end. It's just amazing. The character development, just thinking about what that did for some of those people's careers. Like, those people are just they hold something special to me, but like, I don't know, it's just so funny, and I find something funny about it every single time.
Yeah.
And it's something new every time. So if you haven't watched Community, you really got to give it a shot.
Yeah.
That is one of the greatest comedy shows ever made. Like, straight up. One of the best.
Yeah, and I really feel like it's a great example of a show that allows itself to change its identity multiple times over the course of its run. And for me, that's what makes it still interesting by the end. And yeah, it's phenomenal. Love that show.
Well, and then how many different tropes they use? Like, they do the mafia trope, and then they do like the war tropes, and then there's even a Star Wars trope. It's just, I mean, every time it gets me like, yeah, I could talk all day about Community and how good it is.
Yeah,
and then one of the other things that so it being Christmas, my wife and I, we rewatched Home Alone 1 and 2, and it was just random because I watched them on Disney Plus, which I know those were made by Fox, and I know Disney bought Fox, and so it's one of those things where it popped up on Disney Plus, and I was like, they have Home Alone on here? What the hell? But I rewatched Home Alone, with my nieces and nephews and stuff. So it was one of those fun things where they're seeing some of my childhood and things like that. But then I went back to Netflix, and there was a show that was suggested for me that was called The Movies That Made Us. And I don't know if you guys have heard about this, but it's only like 5 episodes, and it's really cool insight for some really good movies. Like Home Alone's on there, Ghostbusters, Die Hard, which is the last episode I just watched, and it just has all these insights from the producers, the directors, like how they came up with, like, because growing up at the time I did, Bruce Willis has always been this most badass like action hero. But before that, Die Hard was made in 1985. He was just only on Moonlighting. Everybody was like, this is a freaking joke. He's going to be in an action movie. This guy is a loser. But I never knew that. So all this insight that they're putting out in it is really cool. Like the insights of John Hughes and Chris Columbus for Home Alone, and all the stuff that they ran into, like, studio wise, like it was originally owned by Warner Brothers, and then Warner Brothers was like, oh, you can't do this for this amount of money. So Fox picked it up, and it was all because John Hughes had a buddy that was like high up in Fox, and they were like, at Fox, and he was like, yeah, we'll pick it up. We'll do it at that budget. And John Hughes and Chris Columbus were like, yeah, we'll just keep going. So Warner Brothers came through and like cleared out and just stopped doing that. They were like, yeah, we're canceling it. And then some guy followed right behind, just keep working. Somebody else is paying it. And so
awesome.
it was just this crazy insight to this fantastic movie. And it was so weird that I watched on Disney Plus, and it's Big Brother telling me, like, here's a suggestion. Watch this Home Alone episode of the movies that made us. But I don't know. It was just so cool. All these guys, like Chris Columbus, he picked up all of his guys that he brought, that he used for Heartbreak Hotel, which was just the worst Elvis Presley movie of all time. And I don't know. It was just, they all were like, our careers are over. They got this shot to do Home Alone, and it's the most successful kid movie of all time, and all of them are like, we can 100% put that on Home Alone, and our careers were made by this movie. And it's like, that's badass. Like, I freaking love that movie.
What a great tease for next week. You want to hear us talk about Home Alone? Let's go. I'll watch the movies that made us. I have heard about that from a couple people and heard it's really interesting. I've never seen Die Hard. I know it's a Christmas movie, so I'm putting it on the.
I've never seen Die Hard.
It's a big blind spot for me.
Has any?
Whoa.
What? Am I in a terrorist basement?
Okay, bring me back for another episode. We're watching Die Hard.
I actually would love that because it's been on my list for so long, and I
Yeah,
keep getting shit
yeah.
for not seeing it. I need to watch it. I need an excuse to watch it.
Yeah, you just need to see it. Like it's like one of those things. It doesn't matter if you like it.
Yeah.
You have to watch it.
I
It's
like
just
Bruce
part of
Willis
the,
action movies,
you know.
though. I stand for Fifth
I
Element.
don't anticipate anyone to not like it, but it's just like it's such a part of just life at this point. It feels like it's
Yeah.
I should know. There was an early question on the HQ did a Christmas movie trivia this week, and it was like the 5th question, which is supposed to be pretty easy. And I'm like, I'm supposed to have seen Die Hard. Like, I can't call myself someone who enjoys film if I haven't seen it. And so I quit calling myself someone who enjoys film. I quit.
That's why I'm shocked by the left side of this room now, right? Because I mean, that's my favorite action movie of all time. And I think a lot of people would say that. So I don't know. It's just really interesting because I just watched that episode where they were like, oh yeah, all the production stuff. And Bruce Willis was he was this heavy romantic from this show called Moonlighting. And I was like, yeah, all this is brand new information to the most badass movie of all time. And I love it.
I mean, to be fair, there are like 30 other movies that if you've seen them, you've basically seen Die Hard because everyone just started making Die Hard after Die Hard was made.
I have seen the Die Hard with Justin Long in it. Live Free or Die Hard
Never
or
heard
Die
of
Hard
it.
with a Vengeance?
No, never
Oh,
heard
I
of
think
it.
there was like a
Doesn't-
remake that
No.
Justin Long was.
I don't
Does
think
that
that's
count?
Never
No.
heard of it. Don't know.
Oh.
Don't know what that movie is.
It was all about cyber terrorism. Okay, let's
Never
move
heard
on.
of it. Doesn't
All
sound
right.
like a Die Hard movie to
Gwen,
me.
what can you recommend for us?
Well, I have not had the emotional energy to watch another show this week. So I've watched probably 30 times this week the music video for Into the Unknown.
Yeah.
It's been stuck in my head nightmarishly for...
Are you watching what band a band does it, right?
No, it's
Adina? Okay.
my son requests the one that Elsa sings.
Oh.
So it's
She does have a magical voice.
That Panic at the Disco cover, man,
Okay.
just does
Oh, is
not
that
do
what
it.
it is?
Well, I don't know if it's Panic, like the whole band, or if it's just Brendan Urie. Yeah,
Brendan Urie out there like, yeah, I'm going to jump on this T-Swift single. I'm going to jump into Frozen. He's here for the payday this year.
I do appreciate that you're actually taking the time to stress test your husband's claims that this will hold up better than Frozen 1 on your 100th watch. So-
we're on our way.
Yeah, you're like rolling.
Yeah.
I did not expect this much progress so close to its inception. But yeah, great.
So I do have another book I want to talk about.
Cool.
It's The Edge of Eternity, or no, just Edge of Eternity by Ken Follett, and it is the Century Trilogy number 3. So this trilogy follows, they're kind of intermingled through marriage, but a group of people through the generations from World War I all the way through the Cold War. And this is the Cold War section, and it's really interesting and really fun. It's a historical drama, and one of the original characters just died, and I'm devastated. But what I really like about this series is that it's gotten me to read or interested in topics in recent history that I'd never really been interested in. So after reading the second one, I read a biography of J. Robert Oppenheimer, for example, and now I want to go back and read about the Kennedys. It's been a really fun introduction to recent history that I hadn't had before.
Okay, cool. That's awesome. I know the name Ken Follett, and all I know is Pillars.
Pillars of Eternity. I haven't read that yet.
Okay. Is that's not part of this?
No, it's separate.
Okay, cool. Yeah,
Got Eternity on the mind.
Eternity on the mind. And
Tyler?
in the wallet.
What did you watch this week?
Yeah, so mine is also the thing I watched. Actually, has also got me interested in recent history that I maybe missed the first time around. I've been watching a lot of All Elite Wrestling, AEW, the newest contender on the block in the World Wrestling League. It's real good.
Is this the one that everyone left? The other
So-
one?
They have
Yeah,
they have like health benefits in this one,
Yeah,
right?
they've got
It's like the
insurance.
story I've heard.
It's crazy that the way that you make wrestling sexier in 2019 is you pay the hospital bills of the people who are wrestling. It's amazing.
Copays are the new boobs.
Yeah.
I mean, if someone was paying my
I think we
copays.
just got our first T-shirts for the podcast.
Yeah.
But yeah, I've been working on a lot of other stuff, so I haven't like been able to sit. I had plans to go to like 3 movies this week. I did not go to any of them. But man, I have had a lot of wrestling on in the background of just doing stuff, and I love it. It's bad. It is shitty. I've made the argument. I mean, I've argued this to probably everyone at this table. I thoroughly believe that professional wrestling is modern day Shakespeare. It is the energy and gravitas that Shakespearean performers gave at the Globe, and it is made for the common man, which I am definitely one of. But yeah, it's great. Just check out some clips. I'll maybe post a link in the description for the episode. There's a great video that will kind of let you in on one of the founders of AEW Wrestling, Kenny Omega, who's an American who's been wrestling in Japan and had this whole storyline about the Golden Lovers, about these 2 partners who wrestled together, then became enemies, and then made up at the end in the most tender way. But yeah, I've been watching wrestling this week. That is the only thing I can recommend from stuff I watched this week is AEW.
Happy Christmas. Justin, bring us home.
Just a quick comment. I talked about Hollow Knight last week, the game that I'm playing right now. I'm further into it now. I've been playing it quite a bit the last couple days. I think I'm pretty close to finishing it up. Yeah, my favorite antagonist that I've come across in this game, he's not... I still need to figure out what exactly is going on with everything that's happening in Hollow Knight, but I fought a boss who was the Dung Defender, and he's my favorite boss in the game. He just throws balls of shit at you while you're trying to kill him and makes a bunch of happy noises. And
So he's my son.
I mean, I haven't fought your kid yet, but...
Yeah, it's on his list. He's got to work through his own offspring, and then...
Your son's the final boss.
I don't know if he'll make it past tier, though, honestly. That's
Pretty tough, man.
Yeah, it's been good. Tonight I got to a section in the game where it turned into a brutal, like it is a platformer, but it's like Dark Souls meets Mario kind of, more like Metroid. But I got to a platforming section tonight when I was playing that it was rough. It was like you think like, okay, a platformer, it's a platformer, but then it got to some stuff where I was like, man, this is really hard all of a sudden, and I was not expecting this to just come out of nowhere. But I got through it, so
cool.
I'm proud of you.
yeah, it felt good.
Hollow
Got
Knight's
through
great,
it.
man.
It's good. I'm real close. I think I'm real close to finishing the main part of it. There's a bunch of DLC and stuff I think that adds to it, and I know the second one is coming out soon, so I'll probably check that out. But
cool.
Yeah, definitely recommend it.
Well, there you go. A lot of things to fill up your time if you're looking for recommendations. Also, Strangers on a Train was dope, so if you listen to this without seeing it, go to your local library, probably.
Yeah.
I don't know how to...
Sorry, in my mind, what you're saying was if you got to this part of the podcast without listening to the first part, I just want us to summarize.
Yeah, but seriously, if you came just for recommendations, go listen to the first half of the podcast, okay? We need the additional listens. What a great movie. Thanks so much for suggesting it, Casey. Thank you for... Casey is one of our first guests that we've had not present, and it's been awesome. And his beautiful face is just right here on the monitor for us. And we used to work together and just talk about movies all day, so it's really fun to have him on the podcast. If you do want to hear Casey again, he did a podcast with Tyler and I. The podcast is called Sorry I'm Late, and the episode is called... What is the movie you watched?
Sidekicks, dude.
Early 90s kids.
You
Karate Kid knockoff.
Everyone's favorite Chuck Norris movie.
Bad.
Yeah.
You're right.
Yeah.
You're right.
I re-listened to that earlier this week, and I loved it.
Yeah.
I missed those days.
Well, thanks for being here. Again, next week we're going to hit up Home Alone with Amber Sorensen. I'm Mitchell Marshall.
I'm Tyler McKinley.
Gwen Hammer.
Tyler Harris.
Justin Hammer.
Casey?
Casey Callaway.
Yeah, I felt like I didn't want to say it for you. All right.
Yeah.
It's been a blast. Thanks for listening to Rewatchers on the Pod. We'll be back next week.
Love you.
Bye.